Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of the fourth flight test of Starship. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you joining us here. Believe it or not, that is a live view coming in from our very own TLP Starbase camera. It's still dark out. We're waiting for the sun to come up over the next 45 minutes, but we are now just 10 minutes away from the go no go poll with SpaceX to have that propellant loading begin. SpaceX having increased their capability of speed of loading the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle, now taking only 49 minutes to fully fuel it. If you haven't yet, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We got people tuning in from all over the world, and we're glad to have you all joining us live here today. We'll be giving some shout outs. We're, of course, going to be answering your guys' comments and questions throughout today's stream, so make sure you're sending those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the chat there to answer those questions throughout today's stream. If you haven't yet, also take a moment, hit the like button, share out the stream. It's free to do, and invite people to join us as we count down to watch history as today. If everything goes well, we might get to see some of those more incredible re-entry views from the Starship vehicle and the Super Heavy booster as SpaceX attempts to recover both using soft splashdown techniques. That's right, this time SpaceX is planning to conduct that landing flip maneuver of the Starship ship if it gets through re-entry to see if they can prove that it can make it all the way back down to the ocean in the Indian Ocean during today's flight. But that's the big question. Lots of ifs. How will the heat shield hold up? Will more people be collecting heat shield tiles off the beach, or will they hold up and Starship make its way through re-entry? We're going to be taking you through all the steps through today while answering your comments and questions. Also, take a moment, head on over to the Launchpad shop while we wait for the sun to rise to give us that more clear view of the pad. You can get your limited edition Starship Flight 4 launch gear, as well as some incredible photos from our TLP rocket chasers that are out in the field. I have to say, Gavin and the team down on site with Danny and Gavin's family and everyone that's down there, the photos coming in are absolutely incredible. Definitely head on over. Consider picking up a poster or a metal print. We try to offer everything at financial points that make it feasible for everyone, so definitely check that out. And that all goes back into helping us expand our coverage to bring you even better possible coverage of everything space. We got people tuning in from all over the world. We got Daxton in Corpus Christi. We got Ben in Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome. Internet's in Moscow. We got Edward in Tennessee. Heavenly Days is in Jacksonville. We got Bitwise in Tampa, Florida. And we have James in Beaverton, Ontario. Great to see another Canadian here in the chat. As we get ready to await confirmation of that status of that go no go poll, we're going to be answering your guys' comments and questions. But if you're interested in becoming part of our TLP crew and maybe joining me as a Starbase commentator or a general launch commentator, a moderator, or a TLP journalist or researcher, take a moment, fill out the application link that is in the chat in the description, and we would love to invite some of you to join our team. Interviews are underway, and we would love to invite some of you on. We're also playing a little bit of a game today. Super Heavy boosters coming back, and in the description of the video you can see a link to our X account. On there you can submit a very simple Google form on where your guess is that you think Super Heavy will land. If you happen to be in the right location of where Super Heavy re-enters, anyone in that right location will be entered in for a chance to win a full TLP Flight 4 package with a poster, shirt, stickers, a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely check that out with free shipping and everything. So head on over to our X and click the link for the form and submit your official guess for our Super Heavy booster bingo here today. If you're just joining us, we're at L-1 hour, 22 minutes, 21 seconds and counting to the fourth test flight of the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle. The next major milestone is the space director conducting that go-no-go poll for propellant loading. We are expecting that at L-1 hour, 15 minutes. Now, today's 2-hour launch window opens at 7 a.m. Central Time, or about an hour from now. Elon confirmed late last night that they are now officially targeting 7:20 a.m. local time. So within that beginning of that window, but it means we do have 100 minutes that if they need to delay for any reason, they do have that capability. We saw them do that during the last flight, which luckily made it possible to see some better views for Starship's flight. So we hope that we'll see the sun start to rise and the fog clear, that we'll be able to have some incredible views from our first of soon-to-be many cameras down at Starbase. Lots of people just pooling in. We got Blackbird in Switzerland. Great to have you here. Bob's in Michigan. We've got Carl is in Denmark. We got Joe in Florida. And we have Brian watching from St. Pete, Florida. It's great to have you here. Brian is asking, is it possible to see anything from Florida in the western coast area? So there was spottings of Starship, I believe it was Flight 2, that were visible from the Keys of Florida. They actually had a capture of the upper part of the ship spinning following the rud, but the rest of Florida, it'd be very unlikely. It'd be very hard to see, especially since it's a daytime flight. As this becomes normal, if we have night flights, it'll be more common that you'll be able to see the streak across the sky in the very southern part of Florida. But unless you're right down there in the bottom of the Keys, unlikely that you'd see anything here today unless something goes severely wrong, in which case we hope the flight termination system works so that you don't see it. But that's all what we have to see. Chelsea saying TLP is the bomb. We appreciate that. It sounds like some people saw a boat pass by the screen. For those that don't know, this is our own 24/7 live camera that we've got patched in. This camera is live all the time, and if you are a TLP member at the higher Starbase Explorer level, you actually can control our camera. Not today. It's in TLP control right now. But when we're not in a launch broadcast mode for Starbase, you are able to actually control where the camera looks, and you can look at Massey's build site, launch site, and we're working on bringing more of these community control cameras online in the near future, and that's only thanks to your guys' generous support. We want to hear from you guys in the poll. We did one poll where we forgot to put a positive answer, so we redid it. How do you think Starship Flight 4 is going to go? Do you think we're going to see launch successful? Do you think we're seeing a booster splash but a ship rud? Do you think both are going to rud? Or do you think a booster is going to rud but the ship is going to splash? We want to hear from you. 74% of you being positive, bright and early this morning, saying launch successful. I think that's where we all hope to see. I think we all have really good feelings on how the booster is going to go. If things go well, there's a chance next flight they attempt to actually catch a booster, which is so incredible that in just a year and a half time, we're having those conversations about capturing one of the world's largest rocket and booster out of the air during re-entry. If you're just joining us, though, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, and send in your guys' comments and questions in the chat. We'll be answering those live as we continue through the broadcast here this morning. We are now just a few minutes away from when that go, no-go poll for prop load is supposed to be conducted by SpaceX Mission Control. Now, SpaceX no longer goes live as early as they used to. They'll be going live at T-minus 30 minutes, and the moment that they do, of course, we will be patching them in. But we have our team monitoring all the feeds from the media, email, to their social media to see how things will progress here today, and if they're going to have that go, no-go confirmed. Now, I do want to make a quick note that we are, of course, monitoring the condition on Starliner. The crewed flight test is in orbit with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. We are monitoring the 3 helium leak condition. One existed prior to launch and was cleared for launch. 2 new ones developed in low Earth orbit. We are monitoring that. At this time, NASA is saying they are go for the docking attempt. Docking now 5 hours, 13 minutes away, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that as the team prepares to approach the International Space Station. If you want to stay up to date on that, we do have our live tracker on Starliner that you can pull up simultaneously to this to follow along with those conditions. Lots happening in the space world all at the same time. We've got the Starship flight test, and then we have the Starliner crewed flight test, and then we have the Starship flight test happening within 24-hour period. We just had confirmation the crew on Starliner are now taking their private medical conferences. This was part of the timeline in preparation for them getting into docking operations here this morning. See a couple of people asking what does RUD mean. RUD stands for Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. So this is a moment where the flight termination is used, or it needs to be used, or when the vehicle just disintegrates in itself. That is caused by an issue that was not something that went nominally. Nominally meaning, well, that it did what it was supposed to do. So we hope to have a nominal flight here this morning, but we'll have to wait to see how things are going. People tuning in all over the world. We got Andrew in Perth, Western Australia, Tim's in Montgomery, Alabama. We got James in Poland, Chaz is in Tulsa. We got Mark in Reno, and we have Scootsy in the west coast of Oregon, and we have Juicy in Juicy in Ukraine, and Astro is in Africa, and Trey is in Leland, North Carolina. If you guys are having watch parties today, we're going to try to do our best to get this on air, but we want to see your guys' watch party pictures. You can send us those over on our email at contact@tlpnetwork.com, or send it to us in the Discord, which is links in the chat and the description, or you can post it to social media by tagging us TLPN_official on X or the Launchpad Network on Facebook. We're going to try to bring some of those up on the screen during today's countdown to launch for Starship. But we want to see who you're watching with, where you're watching from. It's a little early for schools, unfortunately, but we do know that there are families that have all gotten up early to watch this historic fourth flight test of the Starship Super Heavy vehicle, a vehicle that will one day take us to the moon and then on to Mars. And crazy thing to say, but a lot of us are going to have a chance to fly this vehicle, asterisk, if it works. So that is what we are watching for here today. As we come down to L-1 hour, 15 minutes, we are awaiting confirmation from SpaceX, but we are going to tick that next box on the timeline. We should be now in the go, no go poll for propellant loading. Now, this can take as long as they need. They have 100 minutes in the timeline should they need to adjust this for any reason. We'll be keeping a close eye on that, but at this time, SpaceX mission controllers should be running through everything on their screens in preparation for flight. The tank farm, we saw recondensers come active a couple of hours ago already, so the tank farm is alive and ready. It's fully fueled, ready to fill the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle. Now, some of you might be saying, wait, we're only an hour, 15 minutes to launch, but they haven't started fueling. That's a long, not a lot of time left compared to the early flights, Flight 1 and 2, where they started fueling kind of at that 2-hour mark. With the new tank farm that they've been developing while they've been taking down the original vertical orbital launch farm, they've been able to pressurize the system to a higher degree and run lines that they are able to fuel this ship almost as fast, actually faster than a Falcon Heavy, just a few minutes longer than a Falcon 9 now, but this is a much larger vehicle. So we have fuel expected to begin loading at L-49 minutes. So we have a little bit of time, about 25 minutes, till we see that fuel beginning to flow, and hopefully we will have a little bit more of the sunrise happen. It's starting to clear off there, and as long as we can see those blinking lights, that is what the hope is we have here this morning. As long as we can see the blinking lights, we should be able to see the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle out on the pad. I'd say give it to another 5-6 minutes on the light, and we will hopefully have a little bit of a better view in preparation for fuel load. If you're just joining us, though, welcome here to the Launchpad here at TLP. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we're catching up on your guys' comments and questions. You can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. Wolfie is asking a question about Starliner. We'll answer a few Starliner questions, but we'll try to focus on Starship this morning. Could NASA send up another Dragon to the ISS to return the Starliner crew if the Starliner can't return after a docking? In theory, yes, that's definitely something that they could look at. They would need to have Dragon spacesuits. So there would be a lot that has to go into that. SpaceX would have to have a Dragon available. The next Dragon to fly is supposed to be Polaris Dawn, which is later this summer. So it would throw a big kink into the plan of everything SpaceX for this year. But in an emergency situation, that's definitely something that could be considered. The key point to that is Starliner has to be able to dock to station. There's also a rule that you never have more people on station than you have emergency escape vehicles in case something goes wrong. So yeah, they would have to technically break some rules to do so. But if it's what was required to get a crew home, it would be a consideration. At this time, we're not hearing anything that's concerning them at that point. NASA saying the crew is safe with the helium leaks. It is something that we've seen in previous Starliner flights. They've had these leaks to their propulsion systems. So at this time, they're not saying it's a mission critical leak, but it is something they are monitoring and having the crew navigate as they get ready to dock to the International Space Station. Jennifer saying, as long as Starship reaches orbit, I'll be 99% happy. I think that's where most of us feel. So it won't actually be getting into a full orbit here today. Maybe we should run through the timeline of events, because there are some differences in this flight than we have seen in previous flights. So if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Starbase, Texas. SpaceX mission controllers are currently conducting a go-no-go poll for propellant loading, and we have an update from SpaceX. SpaceX now targeting 7:50 a.m. Central Time for the launch of Starship's fourth flight test. Weather conditions are 95% favorable for launch. So we're going to update our timeline there, but SpaceX transitioning the timeline a little bit later, adding about a 30-minute delay to today's flight operations, but that is okay. That doesn't signal anything. It just means they're wanting a bit more time to prepare. So they are now targeting 7:50 a.m. local time. That puts them 50 minutes into today's 120-minute window. So they do still have time to transition. We'll update that T0 here in just a moment as we continue to prepare to watch Starship fly. Bear with me just one moment as we work to get that updated. You guys can send in your comments and questions in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we will work on answering those live to the best of our ability while we continue through today's live launch coverage. There we go, the updated T0. We are now at L-1 hour, 39 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. We're going to walk the timeline of events back to the tank farm being active, and we are waiting for that go-no-go now for propellant load. That go-no-go expected to be conducted at 1 hour, 15 minutes. So we have a little bit more time to answer you guys' comments and questions as we continue through the timeline here. But running us through the mission timeline of what we expect to see happen here today. At T+2 seconds is when we expect to see liftoff. Max Q will occur 62 seconds into flight. This will be followed by a sequence of events beginning with Super Heavy booster MECO. This is when most of the engines of the Super Heavy booster will cut off. Different than Falcon 9, not all of the engines will shut down at MECO. So we'll have that occur 2 minutes, 41 seconds into flight, immediately followed by hot staging. This is when Starship, the ship, will actually ignite its engines while still attached to the Super Heavy vehicle and push itself away during the stage separation. That's going to just be 2 minutes, 45 seconds into flight. Immediately, Starship Super Heavy will ignite some more of its boosters, engines, and perform a boost back burn. This is when the booster will flip back around, hopefully slow enough that it doesn't tear itself apart, and aim itself back towards Texas and fire its engines. It'll kill off all of its speed heading to the east and actually pick up speed, bringing it back to the west with the goal of landing just off the coast of Starbase, which if you are happen to be down at Starbase, Texas, original plans were it to be 13-14 miles off the coast, which is right at the point of the horizon line and the curvature of the Earth. So there is a chance, if you have the right conditions, that you may be able to see the Super Heavy booster coming in for its landing. So the Super Heavy boost back burn will be 2 minutes, 49 seconds into flight, lasting just for 3 seconds. For a minute and 3 seconds. It's a rather quick-ish burn when you think about the scale of this vehicle, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Something new SpaceX has added this time is the hot stage jettison. They are actually going to jettison that kind of crown that is on top of the booster that allows the hot staging to occur. 6 minutes, 39 seconds into flight, Starship's Super Heavy booster will be transonic, and then it will prepare to conduct its landing burn just 4 seconds later. The landing burn expected to last 21 seconds here, with Super Heavy conducting a splash soft-down in the Gulf of Mexico. Starship will continue burning its engines till 8 minutes 23 seconds into flight, where it will enter a suborbital coast phase. During this time, SpaceX will do a number of checkouts and demonstrations showing that they can open and close the door and other tests along the way. Starship will prepare to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere 47 minutes 25 seconds into flight. At 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 38 seconds, that is when Starship will conduct its landing flip and landing burn, with an exciting landing guaranteed 1 hour, 5 minutes, 48 seconds into flight. So if we launch, don't go anywhere. We'll have an hour and 5 minutes, hour and 6 minutes of, I'm sure, some of the most incredible views that we've ever seen. Flight 3 gave us a taste of what we can expect thanks to Starlink, giving us that incredible coverage. Adam Green, thank you so much for that super chat. We appreciate it. Appreciate that support. Woofy's asking, why do you think SpaceX launching despite them not having attached like 3 tiles to the heat shield? Great question. Especially since Elon said that, as you can see, the sun is coming up. So we'll work on getting our camera updated here. Bear with us just a moment as we get that refresh so we can have a better view here. But yeah, it's interesting because Elon did say that Starship will only work if it only loses, like, there's points of failure if it loses like 1 heat shield in areas. And then there's this very clear area that there's 2 missing on the back belly. So there may be a reason they're not able to attach something there. We don't know. We have not been told anything, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we continue to monitor the flight and hope that those 2 tiles don't end up causing some sort of bigger issue. If you're just joining us, we are just over 95 minutes away from the launch of Flight 4. SpaceX is now targeting 7:50 a.m. local time. Actually need to update that overlay a little bit more. We don't have a 100-minute window anymore, as they've taken that additional time out of it. We'll have an additional 70 minutes remaining in the window. As we continue to monitor. So they do have still that bit of time that they'll be able to delay should they need to, but we'll be keeping a close eye. There we go, that camera looking a little bit cleaner as we continue to wait to hopefully see a clear pad shot here with the fog. It's always something fun to navigate down on Starbase is the fog conditions. And we're working our best. We are having plans to bring you even better coverage for Flight 5, and that is only thanks to your guys' generous support. Brian says he'll be happy with a soft landing in the ocean. I think that's what we all hope. If the booster can soft land, that's a huge milestone. I'm not sure how we all feel about the ship, but take a moment, let us know in the poll what you're thinking, and we'll work on seeing what your guys' thoughts are. Make sure that you're letting us know those thoughts in the chat. Should be getting that camera reset there. Always fun navigating sunrise and the fog conditions down at Starbase, Texas. Catching up on your guys' comments and questions. Brian, is it for data that they don't have those 3 tiles? It's possible. They could be doing that to learn data. There isn't something SpaceX has said directly, so we'll have to keep an eye and see if Elon maybe says something following the launch. But ultimately, it's kind of all up to them. We'll have to wait and kind of see how things transition there. The water view you're seeing in front of the blinking lights from Starbase, that is the Port of Brownsville. You will see some boats going back and forth there. That is okay. They are allowed to be in that waterway. That is not a restriction. It will be right before flight. There's a small area that you can't be in. But leading up to flight, it's okay to see activity in this water region. Pamela, will Starship launch be viewed by Central Texans? That's a great question. Thanks for sending that in. We'll work for Flight 5 to try to build a viewing chart for you guys to know where you'll be able to see it. It all depends a lot on your weather conditions. If it was a night flight, it'd be a lot easier to see a lot further, obviously. But something that you may be able to see a small streak on the horizon from somewhere like Corpus Christi. or somewhere like that. But Texas is quite a large state, and Brownsville and Starbase is very far south from the rest of Texas. So, and it's flying southeasternly trajectory. It's a very easterly trajectory, but it does have a slight southern turn to it. So it kind of turns away from everyone. The best option, if you're trying to see Starship in flight, is get on a cruise. Get on a cruise to the Eastern Caribbean, and that is where Starship will fly right overhead of you. So that'd be your best opportunity to see a flight. Brian, can we have a poll on how Starship will perform? We sort of have a little bit of one. We'll do a different poll when we get a little bit closer to flight, so stay tuned for that. The original Double G, will there be daylight when the launch happens? We have daylight coming up now. It is sunrise, but we are keeping an eye on the conditions down in the region as we can get closer and closer to the launch attempt here today. We are catching up on the chat there. We're hearing from our rocket team that they are down in sight. I know we got Matthew, we've got Gavin, we've got John, we've got Danny, all down on site. We had a couple of our rocket teams stay back in on the Space Coast for the launch of Starliner, but we're glad to have the team down there on the new southern Space Coast, Starship Coast, as we continue to monitor those conditions. Powell, thank you so much for becoming a suborbital explorer. Thank you for your support. Catching up on your guys' chat. Dogfish coffee. Yeah, we could use a coffee. This is the second day in a row that we've been having like a 3:30 a.m. wake up for a flight. But super exciting to be watching these type of flights. You know, crewed flight tests of new vehicles. For the first time ever, the United States has 2 crewed vehicles heading or at the International Space Station. That's never happened in human history. And now we're getting to see Starship fly for the 4th time. Keep in mind, it was only just a year and a couple of months ago we saw it fly for the first time, and it's made incredible progress to where it is today. Now, if you do happen to be down in the area, we always try to make it an important notice. This is a very large vehicle. This is a test vehicle. Even if you are at a site that is designated a safe zone, do remember the size of this vehicle. If there is a rapid unscheduled disassembly on the pad or early into the flight, safety first, not photos and videos. Protect yourself. The blast from this can be quite large, even miles away. You're talking something bigger and more powerful than a blast that the N1 had, and the N1 actually killed people about 7 miles away. So there is definitely something to just remember. If you are in the region, be safe, be smart. You are watching a test program. And if you happen to go down, if for some reason they open the road and don't have a launch today, which we don't foresee happening, but if for some reason we happen there, or you go down after the flight, keep in mind you are in an active testing and launch facility. You are taking it into your own risk to be in this area. When Starship is stacked there, you have to keep in mind it is highly pressurized. If that was to pop, your ears would be hurting. So just keep in mind, keep safety first. It's an amazing place to be. I'll encourage anyone that can get down there to see this type of activity this close, this up front and personal. It's an incredible opportunity. But also make sure that you are staying safe there this morning. We are continuing to follow along with the updates here. We are now just about 12 minutes away from when we are expecting that go, no go poll from the SpaceX launch team. SpaceX will begin live coverage 30 minutes prior to launch. Once they do so, we will, of course, patch them in to bring you live updates from mission control there, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that as we continue through the timeline here today. Continuing to monitor the conditions here this morning. SpaceX will be broadcasting on X, but we will patch them in here on our live video. I'm going to take a very quick commentary break to connect with our team that is down on site, getting ready for live views, and we'll work on updating the camera. Another boat getting ready to come into the shot here in a moment, but stay with us right here as we are now just about 10 minutes away from when that flight, the flight crew is expected to conduct a go-no-go poll to begin propellant loading. Stay with us as we count down to Flight 4 of Starship. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad and our continuing live countdown to launch coverage for the fourth flight test of Starship. You are looking at a very foggy live view of Starbase, Texas. We are looking 5.2 miles away from the pad where teams are officially go for propellant load. We are expecting ship fuel load of liquid methane to begin in the next 60 seconds from now, really starting to commit us to this launch timeline. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together, and we're here to bring you full live launch coverage. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us as we count down to SpaceX's targeted launch at 7:50 a.m. Central Time. SpaceX has a 70-minute window left in their original 120-minute window, so if for any reason they need to, they can delay that flight. And we have had confirmation from SpaceX propellant loading is now officially underway on the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle. We will be continuing to bring you live commentary updates throughout the morning as we continue to follow along. If you have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. I've heard from our team they are down on site getting set up. If you haven't yet, head on over to the Launchpad shop, check out some of Gavin's incredible new prints, some of the best ones he's ever taken. They are now available on the Launchpad shop. You can also get your limited edition Flight 4 launch tee, your Starship orbital launch experience tee. So check that out. That all goes back into helping expand our equipment to bring you even better coverage of everything space. But as we get started here, I know lots of people just jumping on, so take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from, and we'd love to give some shout outs there. And we will, of course, be patching SpaceX into the live feed here when they go live. We're expecting them to go live in about 18 minutes time. We're expecting them to go live once we have full propellant loading of ship and booster underway. We're also, of course, really hopeful that the fog will clear off down at Starbase, Texas, for us to be able to have a view. You can just very faintly see the blinking lights of the tower right now. You can see lots of ships and boats maneuvering into the area that they are allowed to be in for launch. But if you guys have questions or comments, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. I know some people doing coffee runs, which is a great idea. We've got that we got a little bit of time, 47 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. An update, we of course are still monitoring the conditions with Starliner and the 3 helium leaks on board the spacecraft. NASA, Boeing, and the International Space Station have all pulled go for docking here this morning. So the Starliner spacecraft is preparing for rendezvous. The crew will begin suit-up procedures in the next little bit as we are 4 hours, 12 minutes from docking. We are, of course, monitoring all those conditions live on our Starliner tracker, so you can make sure to pull that up while watching Starship. 2 big events happening underway. And I'm not sure exactly where it is right now because obviously we've had a delay, but if SpaceX launched at the beginning of their window, there was actually the flight path would have had Starliner and the International Space Station flying 300 kilometers above Starliner as it came by the Indian Ocean, I believe it was. So really interesting to have seen that. We've obviously delayed from the initial launch window at 7 a.m. Central, now targeting 7:50 a.m. People tuning in from all over the world. We got Bravo in Perth, Australia. We got Fanny Brits in Switzerland. Great to have you. Stealth Mode's in St. Augustine, Florida. Aditya is on Earth. That's good to know. Strawberry is in Mohole. We got the Backstage Dev in Brazil. We got Daniel in Montreal, Quebec. Great to see another Canadian. SFS Engineers in India. Great to have you joining us in this morning. We got Powell in Bowral, NSW Australia. I'm blanking on what that stands for this morning. It's been an early morning, and I haven't had coffee yet. Scott is watching in Washington, D.C. Great to have you here. Powell, I bought the first Starship t-shirt over a year ago. That's awesome. I hope you are wearing it here today. Maybe time to get another one as we wait to see Flight 4. Ray, so is Starliner and SpaceX happening concurrently? They'll be pretty close. So if Starship flies in 45 minutes time, which is what we are expecting, we will be then going into about an hour and 5-minute flight. So if you add that to the time, that'll take us to almost 9 a.m. Central, which brings us 2 hours from now, and that is when the rendezvous and docking stream will have already begun for Starliner. So we have the capability to be running both. We've got that set up. We'll be doing commentary updates on both as well. Powell, New South Wales, thank you. I was going to say something else, but I'm glad it's that. Appreciate you sending that in. Wolfie, what are the reasons they are dropping the interstage on Flight 4? So it's a great question. We haven't had that confirmed by SpaceX on why they are ejecting the hot stage and ring, but it is something they've decided to do for this flight. There are some hypotheses and kind of assumptions that the hot stage ring actually might have ripped off during Flight 3. So the thought is maybe during this, it gives them a little bit more control on the booster. You are talking about an area with a lot of air gaps, which could cause control issues. So it might be one of those things that's just easier jettison it, and for rapid reusability in the future, hopefully they won't have to, or they can just very quickly stack a new one on. So they're going to be working on that. Lots of new things coming in the timeline of the future of Starship. If you're just joining us, we're at L-44 minutes, 10 seconds and counting to the fourth flight test of Starship. We have ship fuel and liquid oxygen now being loaded onto Starship. Booster will begin its fueling process here in the next couple of minutes, starting off with its liquid methane and then its liquid oxygen in a few minutes' time. SpaceX plans to go live 30 minutes prior to launch, and of course, the moment they do, we will patch them in and listen into Mission Control for an update, as they know more than us, and we don't want to speculate. We want to listen to what is actually happening. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live while we count down to the fourth flight test of the Starship Super Heavy launch vehicle. If you haven't yet, also take a moment, engage that like button, and share out the stream. Invite people to join us. We will work on answering those live while we continue to monitor the conditions. Propellant loading of the ship now underway for about 7 minutes' time, signaling that SpaceX is progressing incredibly well toward today's Starship flight test. Now, if you're ending up watching with friends or family, we want to see your guys' watch parties. You can send that to us on social media, on X at TLPN_official, or join it in on our TLP Discord. That's where our community hangout is happening. I'm hanging out even while streaming here and in comms with our crew. I am also in comms with all of you, so definitely take a moment and pop in there. We'd love to see your guys' watch parties, but if you send us those photos on social or to our email, contact@tlpnetwork.com, we're going to work on trying to bring some of those on screen a little bit later in the show. We do believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you all joining us here. We just had confirmation from SpaceX that they are continuing in the propellant loading timeline. 53 seconds ago, propellant loading of the Super Heavy booster is now underway, so running right basically a couple minutes ahead of the timeline. Booster fuel load now underway. Liquid oxygen loading of the booster is expected to begin in about 4 to 5 minutes time. Catching up on the chat and answering your guys' comments and questions. Saw a couple people asking, what does RUD mean? RUD stands for Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. So this is what happens when Starship kind of tears itself apart or explodes. Both Starship and Super Heavy do have a flight termination system installed. This is installed so if there is an issue with the vehicle, they are able to detonate it to help protect the safety of people if it were to fly out of zone. During the first flight, I believe it was, though they didn't really have control of it with all the tumbling, it was actually beginning to fly out of the safety zone, and they would have been required to activate that flight termination system just to protect, because people could have had ships on the edge of that area. So a RUD is basically an explosion that wasn't planned. The FTS is a last-minute measure to protect safety. Woofy, wouldn't it be possible to put chutes on the interstage to make Starship fully reusable again, even with it jettisoning? So you'd have to add weight for the parachutes. You'd have to add a computer to be able to do that, which means you need to have electronics and batteries. So there'd be a lot more to it. In theory, is it possible? Yes. it just might not be practical. And keep in mind, Starship is not done growing yet. This is kind of baby Starship. It's going to be stretching by quite a bit over the next year to Starship V2. The new tower segments are already mostly at Starbase, the last few getting sent from Florida this week. And we expect to see that second tower start to take shape over the coming months. And of course, we will track along with that. Unlike the last tower that took kind of about 8 months to build, we're expecting this one to go up incredibly quickly. If you're just joining us, though, welcome. We are now L-40 minutes and counting to the fourth flight test of Starship. If you haven't yet, take a moment, share out the stream, invite people to join us. Continuing to follow along. We're going to take a very quick commentary break, and then we will be back as we expect SpaceX to begin their live coverage in about 9 minutes time. So we're going to get that all patched back in. We're going to keep answering your comments and questions in just a couple of minutes, so make sure you send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad and share out the stream, and stay with us as we count down to launch of Starship on its fourth flight test. Stay with us. And if you are just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You are looking at a live view below me from Starbase, Texas. It's a foggy morning as we are now counting down L-minus 34 minutes, 6 seconds, and counting till launch of the SpaceX Starship on Flight 3. We're continuing to monitor the countdown. Don't know why that overlay changed there. One moment. As we continue to count down to launch here. As always, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live. But as we get into the final minutes of the count, we're going to be quiet and listen in to SpaceX Mission Control for an update as we prepare to watch Starship fly for the 4th time. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us. L-minus 33 minutes, 30 seconds and counting until excitement is guaranteed. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control as we count down to launch of Starship.
At a live view of Starship as we await its 4th flight test from Starbase, Texas, also known as the Gateway to Mars. Thanks for tuning in. We're excited to be joining you once again from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. As you can tell, the crowd is getting excited behind us. We're here in front of Mission Control Center. Now, we are targeting liftoff at 7:50 a.m. Central Time in just over 30 minutes from now. It's been roughly 2.5 months since our last Starship flight test, and the turnaround time between these tests just keeps getting shorter and shorter.
Today, we hope to surpass what we achieved in Flight Test 3 in March. Our primary goal is to get through the extreme heat of Starship reentry, which is no easy feat. As with all of our flight tests, our goal is to collect as much data as possible. Every flight gets us another step closer to a fully operational Starship. Starship is the most powerful vehicle ever developed and the first design of a rocket that is capable of making life multiplanetary.
Starship will allow us to land humans on the moon again after more than half a century, fly the heaviest payloads ever flown, and ultimately fly humans further into space than ever before. Getting there will require us to fly frequently, which is why we're producing so fast. We already have hardware built and are preparing for our next several flights.
But the most important thing about Starship is that it's designed to be fully and rapidly reusable, and of course, reliable. We've been designing from day one to realize a vision of having an entire city of people on Mars, something we know will take launching millions of pounds of cargo and equipment into space spread across thousands of launches.
The faster we can learn now, the faster we can improve and evolve Starship to achieve this vision. And that brings us to today's flight test, the 4th of many that will get us one step closer to Mars. But before we dive into the details of today's test, let's do a quick rewind and talk about our last integrated flight test, Flight 3. On March 14th, Starship successfully lifted off at 8:25 a.m. Central Time from Starbase, Texas. It cleared the launch tower and went on to accomplish several major milestones and firsts. All 33 Raptor engines on the Super Heavy booster started up successfully and completed a full duration 2-minute and 41-second ascent burn.
Then we saw our second ever hot stage separation, powering down all but 3 of Super Heavy's Raptor engines and then igniting the ship's 6 Raptors to create separation. Next, Super Heavy completed its flip maneuver and ignited the 13 center engines for the boost back burn to send it towards its splashdown point in the Gulf of Mexico. All 13 engines ran successfully until 6 engines began shutting down, triggering an early end to the boost back.
After descent, we attempted the first ever Super Heavy landing burn, which uses the same 13 center engines that we used on boost back. Since 6 of those experienced the early shutdown in the boost back burn, we attempted the landing burn with the remaining 7 Raptors, and 2 of those 7 reached main stage ignition. In the end, contact was lost with the booster at approximately 462 meters in altitude over the Gulf of Mexico, just under 7 minutes into the mission.
Post-flight data reviews showed that the early boost back burn shutoff was most likely caused by filter blockage where oxygen is supplied to the engines. We saw a similar issue on Flight 2 and had added hardware to mitigate it, which worked to get us to our first ever landing burn attempt.
Now for today's flight, we upgraded those filters further and made some additional hardware and software changes to increase our chances of igniting all 13 engines for the landing burn. Now, turning back to the Flight 3 ship, we saw all 6 Raptor engines start successfully and powered the vehicle to space, marking the first time we completed its full ascent burn.
While coasting, we completed some additional objectives, including the opening and closing of the payload door. We also transferred propellant between tanks inside the ship, which is a key test as we prepare for full ship-to-ship prop transfers in the future. Once we were into our coast, though, the ship gradually lost the ability to control its attitude or orientation, which is done with smaller thrusters around the spacecraft.
As a result, the vehicle experienced some unplanned rolling. It still flew on the planned trajectory, but losing attitude control triggered the flight computer to skip a planned relight of a single Raptor engine while on orbit. And then the moment that we all had been looking forward to for so long, as you can see here, the ship's re-entry from space. This was the first time that we were able to get real live flight data on things like heating and vehicle control during hypersonic re-entry, of which we will talk more about later.
Not having attitude control meant both protected and unprotected areas saw heating much higher than anticipated. But we were able to get live, high-definition views and real-time data during entry thanks to Starlink terminals on the ship, which itself was a widely successful test. This gave us confidence that we'll continue to get unparalleled insight into the ship's re-entry in order to rapidly improve.
And as they say, all good things must come to an end. And for Flight 3, this occurred when contact with the ship was lost at approximately 65 kilometers in altitude, roughly 50 minutes into the mission. After reviewing data from the flight, we found the most likely cause of the unplanned rolling seen during the ship coast phase and re-entry phase was blockage of valves that help control the smaller attitude control thrusters.
We upgraded these to make them more resilient and added some additional thrusters for redundancy. Overall, we learned a tremendous amount from that last flight, and capping it off with those re-entry views was truly an exciting end to the mission.
Incredible.
So back to today's test. Today's mission profile is similar to Flight 3, but we have new test objectives, the first of which is getting through the extreme heat of re-entry. About 27 minutes from now, Super Heavy will ignite its 33 Raptor engines and lift off from Starbase. A little more than 2.5 minutes into flight, the Super Heavy booster will separate from the ship in a hot stage separation, meaning that it'll light its engines while still attached to a partially lit booster. The booster will perform a flip maneuver, followed by a boost back burn. About 2 seconds after that burn ends, we'll jettison the booster's hot stage. As it heads back to Earth, the booster will attempt a landing burn before splashing down into the Gulf.
Meanwhile, the ship's engines will remain lit for just under 6 minutes during its ascent before shutting down for the coast phase. The ship will coast for about 40 minutes or so, reaching a peak altitude of 214 kilometers. And after its coast phase, the ship will attempt a controlled re-entry, including a flip maneuver and a landing burn, before splashing down in the Indian Ocean. Now, we say attempting because, again, this is a test, and nothing is guaranteed. As we mentioned earlier, the booster and the ship have to contend with some extreme conditions on re-entry.
For this flight test, we do not plan to recover any hardware from the booster or the ship. With the exception of Falcon, this is no different than what happens to most rockets flying today that are expended or fall into the ocean after completing their mission. Eventually, we will land and recover Starship boosters and ships, as we do today with Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy boosters. And in fact, we've landed 316 Falcon boosters to date.
Even though recovery is not planned, the telemetry and data we receive all the way to the end is what we're looking for, which will help us continue to build a rapidly reusable Starship for the future. In other words, the payload for this mission is data. It's also worth mentioning that the hot stage jettison is an off-nominal procedure that we're using as a temporary way to reduce the weight of the vehicle for its water landing today.
Yeah, exactly. Future designs give Super Heavy boosters a lighter weight integrated hot stage intended for full reusability, which will mitigate the need to jettison the hot stage. Okay, so now that we have a handle on today's flight test, let's check in with Dan. Dan, how's it going?
Hey, Jesse, and welcome everybody back to Starbase for yet another Starship launch. I'm coming to you live from the Raptor's nest behind the Mega Bay. I'm here with our Pad Red team and some of our flight controllers. this morning. Everything has been going really smooth. We did have the red team going a little bit earlier to fix a ground side issue, but that was taken care of. That's why we slid a little bit later into our window. But as of right now, we are on track for liftoff at 7:50 a.m. Central Time. That's 12:50 UTC. As you can see, we are actively loading propellant onto Starship and Super Heavy. Those frost lines are ticking up as we load liquid methane, that's our fuel, liquid oxygen, that's our oxidizer, onto both vehicles. They're cryogenic, so they're subcooled to several hundred degrees below zero. Since Flight 3, we've made a few more upgrades, helping to bring Prop Farm 2.0 online. That's just going to help us to continue to shorten the amount of prop load time that we're going to need. We're also going to be using it for Launch Tower number 2, which is going to be coming to Starbase real soon. The faster we go, the less prop we're going to lose to boil off, and the better we can ensure things like temperatures are in the right range for Raptor startup. Now, those first 2 flights took about 90 minutes to load prop on board. That third, we knocked it all the way down to just 51 minutes. We're aiming for about 46 minutes of prop load time for today's op, eventually hoping to get that down all the way to 40, which for some context, that's just 5 minutes more than we take to load Falcon 9, but we're doing it with 10 times the amount. So this morning, ship prop load started at T-minus 50 minutes, booster at T-minus 43 minutes. We're going to pause the ship main tank prop load in just a couple of minutes to do the header tanks, which are going to do that attempted ship landing burn. We expect the ship to close out all of its prop at about 3 minutes and 20 seconds before liftoff, and then booster at about 2:50. Now, our final countdown sequence is going to look very familiar. It's going to be the exact same as it was on flights 2 and 3. So we'll light those engines, and then about 4 seconds later, we will actually see it lift off. But I mean, right now, we are just under 23 minutes away from launch. We're not working any issues either with the vehicle, the range. Weather is 95% go, so not dealing with any winds or weather issues today. If we do have to scrub, our next attempt would probably be about 48 hours from now. It's all going to be driven by commodities and just how far we get into the count. But everything looking good for liftoff just about 22 and a half minutes from now. I'll check back in with you guys in a few minutes, and I'll send it back over to Kate and Jesse.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Flight tests like today are the fastest possible route for us to dramatically improve Starship's capabilities. The Starship flying today has already seen a number of changes based on what we learned from Flight Test 3 in March, which was only 2.5 months ago. Development moves really fast here at SpaceX. Let's take a closer look at the iteration of the vehicle flying today. Starship is comprised of 2 elements, the ship, which has 6 Raptor engines, and the Super Heavy booster, which has 33 Raptor engines.
The current iteration of Starship is essentially an experimental vehicle flying for development. Starship 2 will be capable of carrying more than 100 tons to orbit, and Starship 3 will be able to handle more than 200 tons to orbit. Compared to Saturn V, the rocket that first took astronauts to the moon, Starship has more than twice the thrust. And with a few planned upgrades, Starship will have 3 times the thrust of Saturn V, plus the added benefit of full reusability. The amount of mass that we're able to launch per rocket is crucial to creating a self-sustaining city on Mars.
Now, to get a sense of how big Starship is, let's start with the average-sized human, which is about 2 meters high. And towering over our average human is the length of the Millennium Falcon, which comes in at 35 meters. Our Falcon 9 rocket with the payload fairing attached is double the size of the Millennium Falcon at 70 meters, and nearly twice the size of that is the fully integrated Starship at 121 meters tall. The ship is about 50 meters tall, and the Super Heavy booster alone stands 71 meters. Eventually, the ship and booster will get even taller.
Starship's first stage has a diameter roughly 2.5 times that of Falcon 9, and with 33 much larger Raptor engines, as you see there. I love this view because we don't have this view on our Falcon missions. This is looking up under the Super Heavy booster. Now, moving up the rocket, the ship features 6 Raptors, 3 sea-level engines and 3 vacuum engines, which, as the name suggests, are optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. And Starship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing on any hard surface. The ship is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's attitude during atmospheric flight and enable a precise landing.
And in between the first and second stages is our hot stage, our newest separation technique, which we saw in action during flight tests 2 and 3. The body of Starship is wrapped in a heat shield made up of 18,000 hexagonal ceramic tiles designed to insulate the vehicle during atmospheric entry, where temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit or over 1,400 degrees Celsius. Speaking of those heat shield tiles, re-entry was a pretty exciting first for our team, and Starlink allowed us to gather critical data about this stage of flight.
Reusability significantly reduces the cost of space travel, and it's the key to making humans a multi-planet species. Starship is designed for rapid reusability, which means the booster and the ship need to re-enter Earth's atmosphere and land back precisely at the launch site.
With each flight test, we gather more and more data to help hone Starship's re-entry capabilities. The more information we have from each flight, the quicker Starship development can proceed. One way to gather more information is to improve communication throughout the flight, including re-entry, where historically there has been a communications blackout.
To do this, we equipped Starship with Starlink terminals to expand its communication capabilities. The Starlink terminals are those 4 black squares that you see there on top of the ship. Starlink is the world's largest constellation of highly advanced satellites operating in a low orbit around the Earth, providing high-speed internet on Earth and now in space.
Starship is designed to have a large surface area to create considerable drag during re-entry. Traveling at about 27,000 kilometers per hour, or almost 17,000 miles per hour, Starship compresses the air in front of it, causing the temperature of the air to rise and ionize, turning it into plasma. This plasma layer interferes with communications by absorbing and reflecting radio waves, leading to the communications blackout we've seen historically with spacecraft during atmospheric reentry. With Starship, most of that plasma is built up around the front and sides of the vehicle, leaving an opening downstream where we're able to point our Starlink terminals. And with Starlink also operating at a higher frequency than traditional space-based communications, we're able to power through any residual plasma to provide real-time video and data at high speeds back to the ground.
Super cool. We actually got to see this in action on Starship's last test, Flight 3, which had the first ever live HD video of a spaceship re-entering the atmosphere. SpaceX engineers were able to gather data on the performance of Starship as it re-entered the atmosphere and watched the heat shield in action. Now, the physics of re-entry are extremely hard to replicate perfectly on the ground, so access to this data is an invaluable tool for rapid iteration. In fact, one cool observation from that Flight 3 was seeing how shock waves form at different parts of the vehicle and how they interact to put pressure on the ship, especially the flaps. This is really valuable for Starship since no spacecraft has ever flown with 4 movable flaps like what we use for aerodynamic control. Starship's greatest strength will be rapid and reliable reusability, and Starlink has become a critical tool to make that a reality.
Over the next few flights, we'll continue to improve the Starlink performance on Starship, eventually enabling more views and enabling more data to be transmitted in real time. And we'll keep experimenting during entry. You might have noticed a few tiles missing or looking different near the bottom of Starship. We intentionally placed 1 thin tile and removed 2 tiles completely. In their place, we now have sensors to see how hot things get without the tiles in those locations, while also testing some backup thermal protection options. Ideally, we expect Starship's reentry to improve on each flight, thanks in part to this wealth of new data. But if getting to space is hard, returning from space is even harder.
That's right. No one has ever succeeded in creating a fully and rapidly reusable heat shield. So we could see some spectacular failures before we get this right. But with communications improving on each flight, we will continue to gather more and more data to inform our development. We're now about 15 and a half minutes until our next liftoff attempt. In the meantime, let's take a look at some of the technology we have in development as we prepare to head to the moon in future missions.
Starship will be taking astronauts to the moon as part of NASA's Artemis program. Next year, we plan to demonstrate ship-to-ship propellant transfer, which will be important for our upcoming moon missions. Today, we're actively testing a lot of hardware that will make exploring the moon possible. One recent series of tests brought together the key pieces we'll see when landing back on the moon. Starship, spacesuits, and astronauts.
Together with Axiom and NASA, our teams put 2 astronauts in pressurized Axiom spacesuits and practiced the first steps of going to the lunar surface. The team used test builds of a Starship airlock, as you see there, and elevator to gather data on how well future Artemis astronauts will be able to move around once fully suited. Tests like this are incredibly helpful for engineers designing these systems, as they have the opportunity to get feedback directly from experienced astronauts Peggy Whitson, who is on the right of this photo, and Doug Wheelock, who's on the left. You can see them in action during this elevator test.
SpaceX will perform one uncrewed demonstration flight before NASA's Artemis 3 mission, which will be the first human surface expedition since 1972. After those first expeditions, we'll be ready to fly more people along with everything it takes to build a moon base. In many ways, Artemis feels like an extension of the human spaceflight work SpaceX and NASA have been partnering on for some time now. In fact, we just celebrated the anniversary of the Demo 2 mission.
That's right. Just 4 years ago, on May 30th, 2020, SpaceX launched the first crewed test flight of our Crew Dragon spacecraft. Dragon carried NASA astronauts Douglas Hurley and Robert Behnken to the International Space Station in the first crewed orbital spaceflight launched from the United States since the final Space Shuttle mission in 2011, and the first ever operated by a commercial provider. You can see Bob and Doug there on your screen. That was certainly a memorable day for all of us here at SpaceX, one that we fondly think back on. And it's exciting to think about Starship being the next to take its first astronauts to the moon. In tandem with Starship development, all of our operational human spaceflight missions are helping us prepare for those future trips to the moon. Our upcoming private astronaut mission, Polaris Dawn, you can see the crew there on your screen. They will play a big role in testing procedures that will be relevant to our moon and eventually Mars missions. We're looking forward to the third Polaris Dawn mission, which will be the first crewed Starship flight.
The Polaris Dawn crew will attempt to reach the highest apogee ever flown by a spacecraft, and they'll also be performing a spacewalk, or extravehicular activity, wearing SpaceX's newly designed spacesuits. They'll also be testing space-based communications, which will be critical to future deep space missions. The Polaris Dawn mission is currently targeted to launch no earlier than July of this year, so stay tuned, because that is going to be a very exciting mission to watch. In the meantime, at T-minus 12 minutes, let's check back in with Dan on today's countdown.
Hey, thanks, Jesse. Everything continues to go real smoothly. It's been a real quiet day so far. The board looks really clean, not tracking any impediments to a launch just under 12 minutes from now. Prop loads continuing. Looking at the numbers real quick, we're about 85% full on the ship. We did pause to start filling those header tanks on ship. Again, those are the 2 smaller tanks in the very top of the nose cone that we're going to use for that attempted landing burn with ship. And with the booster, we're just at about 76% or so on our methane and LOX, so getting pretty full there. Those are going to continue down to about 3 minutes and 20 seconds before liftoff. That's when we'll close out all the prop on the ship. And then T-minus 2 minutes and 50 seconds on the booster. A lot of work also going on in the background. Our range safety teams working to make sure the area, not just around the pad, but in the sea space out in the Gulf, and also in the anticipated entry point in the Indian Ocean, are clear. We're not tracking any blockers, any boats, anything like that in the zone right now, but their work literally continues right up until those last couple of minutes. So they're working pretty hard to make sure everything stays clear. But right now the range is green. I already talked about it in the beginning. It looks a little bit cloudy, but weather not a concern today. Really light winds. We only had about a 5% chance of violation when we started this morning, and that's held. So everything continuing to look really good for launch so far. The pad itself is getting ready. Reminder that we're going to light those engines about 4 minutes before it actually takes off. So you'll see them start, the 33 engines on Super Heavy start to light prior to that T0. And then about 2 seconds after, we'll start to see first motion. But everything looking great. Just coming up on 10 minutes until launch. Getting excited down here. Ready to feel the rumble. I'll send it back to you guys over in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Dan.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad and our continuing live launch coverage of SpaceX's fourth flight test of Starship. You were looking at live views from the launch complex from SpaceX, as well as our own camera, as well as inside SpaceX Mission Control, where many of the engineers have gathered to watch today's flight. L-9 minutes, 35 seconds and counting. Everything continuing well. Engine chill has now begun on both the booster and the ship in preparation for flight. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, invite people to join us. If it's your first time here, though, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad Network and here at TLP. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. We're honored that you're joining us for our live launch coverage for Flight Test 4. If you haven't yet, subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. Quick programming note, while we are watching Starship fly, we will be also running full live commentary coverage of the docking of Starliner to the International Space Station. So make sure you pull that up on another tab as we watch that. Teams are still monitoring those helium leaks, but have given go for rendezvous and docking. So 2 big moments in spaceflight exploration that'll be happening at the same time. 8 minutes, 40 seconds and counting till launch. Everything continuing nominally for today. SpaceX playing through an animation of what a booster catch would actually end up looking like. If everything goes well, Elon says they're going to try to attempt this in the next launch or 2. So as soon as in the next couple of months, we could see the first ever booster catch attempt, let alone of a rocket, but of a rocket of this size, the world's most powerful and largest rocket in human history, and it's just getting bigger over the following months. If you have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. We'll work on answering those live. Make sure you share out the stream, invite people to join us, and take a moment and open up the Launchpad shop. That's where you can get your limited edition TLP Flight 4 gear, as well as our posters and metal prints for our incredible rocket chasers that are down on site. All the profits of that go back into expanding our equipment to bring you even better cameras, even better than this one, a little bit closer so we don't have to deal with the fog. We've got huge plans for Flight 5, and that's only possible thanks to your generous support. As we come down to the final 7.5 minutes of flight, I'm going to be quiet. We're going to listen to SpaceX Mission Control. They're the ones with all the updates. Everything is trending green. We're going to do it a little bit earlier than we normally do, but as always, let's see that go, no go in the chat from you guys. If you're not a TLP member yet, consider hitting that join button. 99 cents a month gets you that awesome TLP helmet next to your name in green, as well as gets you access to our TLP launch emotes. On behalf of the entire TLP crew, thank you for joining us. We send our wishes to the entire SpaceX team. We do know some of them are watching, and we wish you all the best on Flight 4. This is going to be a huge step towards making life multiplanetary. A step at a time we're getting there, and one day we will all get to fly on board Starship, not only to the moon and Mars, but also to change what flight here on Earth is like as well. And some incredible footage from inside the Star Factory as SpaceX gets ready to ramp up building these ships. They're going to be building ships every couple of days, boosters every week, and just really start cranking this out as we get ready to be multiplanetary and take tens, hundreds, and then eventually millions of people around the world and off planet. If you'd like to support what we can do, you can hit that join button or send super chats. L-6 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control for the final minutes of the count. Go Starship.
We throw up the graphics for prop load that we're almost closed out, ship more than 90% full. Those header tanks are done. And then the boosters coming up on 90% real soon. So we're going to see those close out in the next couple of minutes. Ship's going to end at about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It'll be fully loaded. And then booster at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds. After all the props loaded on, we go through a lot of steps to safe ground systems. You're doing things called pushbacks, where you're just clearing all of those lines on the ground of propellant before we lift off. But once we're done, we're going to have 10 million pounds of liquid propellant on board Starship to help power the most powerful vehicle ever designed. If we do hold, we have a built-in hold gate at T-minus 40 seconds. We can hold there for about 30 minutes or so today. If we need to wait for final pressure checks or if we have anything on the range, anything like that. Did just get that the range is green. So we are coming up 5 minutes and 20 seconds away. We are not planning to hold at T-minus 40 unless we trip some kind of hold alarm, something like that. So we could blow right through that gate and go right to launch. Don't be shocked if we hold at T40, though. And if we do, we can hold for a couple of minutes and then keep going. Our window is open all the way until 9 a.m. today.
Now, once we pass through T minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems will come up to flight pressure, and the ship will go to internal power.
Now, after that, the quick disconnect arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction shortly after T0. Gas lines connected to the booster and ship are vented down, and once we pass T minus 40 seconds, we still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to T minus 40 seconds and hold there to assess what happened and if we can proceed again to T0.
However, once the water for the deflector system begins flowing at T minus 10 seconds, any issue after that would be an automatic scrub for the day, as teams would need to refill the deflector's water tanks, as well as the lock storage tanks at the tank farm before making another attempt. So, as Dan mentioned earlier, we are not planning to hold at the optional T minus 40 second mark. That moment basically is what would allow teams to wait for final checkouts or assess prop levels or avionics, vehicle pressurization, the range, the weather. Weather is 95% go, as you can see from these incredible drone views that we have and pad cams. It is a beautiful day. Of course, we have some clouds billowing from the locks there.
Yeah, and again, a reminder that the payload for this mission is data, and our primary goal is to get ship through the extreme heat of reentry today. We're very excited to see that. We did get very close on Flight 3, so I'm excited to see how these iterations that we've made to the vehicle will help improve our chances of success today.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just as a reminder for the booster, now we are not attempting to recover any hardware today, both either on ship or booster. For the booster, we will be attempting to perform a landing burn to have a soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico. We made some improvements from our Flight 3 learnings, so hopefully that will work and we'll see a successful soft splashdown. For the ship, we're hoping to demonstrate controlled re-entry, including a flip maneuver and landing burn, and that will be followed by splashdown in the Indian Ocean. That is the same target as we had on Flight 3, so everything should look pretty similar in that regard. And we just heard the call out there that all prop load is closed out, so at this point, there is like 10 million pounds of propellant on board Starship, which is incredible.
This is getting very exciting. We are just about 2 minutes away from T0.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are L-2 minutes and counting till the launch of the 4th flight test of Starship. If you haven't yet, take a moment. Let's see that go, no go in the chat. Let us know where you're watching from as well, and share out the stream and invite people to watch history. L-1 minute, 45 seconds and counting. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control.
Propellant, and that'll be completed over the next couple of seconds. We're coming up on that T-40 mark. Again, not planning to hold. If we do, or if we get a hold after we pass it, we can snap back to that T-40, and then we can stay there for about 30 minutes or so if any other issues crop up. Once we pass T-40, a lot of things happen, both on the vehicle and the ground. It's running a lot of its own self-checkouts, venting different tanks and pressure lines throughout the vehicle. We essentially built that 40 seconds as that's about how much time it takes for the vehicle to take all of those actions, which is why we hold there. But all of that happens automated. You do a final checkout of the TVC, the thrust vector control, how we're going to steer. And then we see liftoff. So we're under a minute away. "45 seconds and counting.
Good event, game met.
All right, now as we close in, we are past the 40-second mark. So let's listen in.
Flight Director
Ty Huntington's going to take us through one more time for a Starship liftoff.
You might have missed it, but Flight Director is go, T-20 seconds.
T-15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
vehicle is pitching downrange.
And Starship has launched with 32 engines from Starbase, Texas.
All right, 30 seconds into flight. The rumbles are still building here in the Raptor's nest. We're seeing 32 out of 33 engines lit on the Super Heavy right now. Coming up shortly is going to be max Q, that maximum aerodynamic pressure as we go uphill on the vehicle.
Max Q.
All right, we just passed through max Q, so we're going to continue on up. We still have about a minute and 30 seconds until we get to stage separation. Starship now flying faster than the speed of sound. All right, so you got a couple of views. You got some ground trackers in your top camera there. You're looking down from the top of the booster in the bottom left, and then a camera in the top flap of the ship looking back in the bottom right, so getting a couple of different looks as Starship heads uphill. Once we get the hot staging, a lot of things happen all at once simultaneously. We're going to light the engines on the ship, starting with the RVACs first, and then the 3 center sea level engines before we're separated. All of that exhaust gets plumed out the side of the hot stage, and then the ship will separate itself. All but the 3 center engines on the booster are going to shut down, so the booster never stops its thrust while we go through this hot stage maneuver. After that, the booster is going to do its flip, start heading back, and then the ship will be on its own power on its way to space. So that's.
And if you're just joining us, you're looking at some incredible views from onboard Starship as it flies for the 4th time. We are awaiting the sequence of hot staging.
Lit on the booster, and we'll start to see those stagger down. They're going to turn off in banks, so you'll see the lights on the bottom left screen of the engines that are active start to turn off in different groups, and you'll see those 3 center ones lit.
Booster engine cut off. Ship ignition. Stage separation confirmed.
Boost back burn start up.
Acquisition signal. Houston.
Hot stage confirmed. Ship under its own power. Booster boosting back. Looks like all 13 are lit. Kate, we got a booster on the way back to the Gulf and a ship on the way to space.
Acquisition signal. Status.
If you are just joining us, you're looking at incredible views from onboard Booster 11 and Ship 29. Super Heavy heading back towards Starbase to land off the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and Starbase, and the ship is heading to near orbit.
Last a little over 1 minute. This propels the booster back toward the coast, taking it to a landing in the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see on your screen in the bottom left-hand corner, we were only using the 13 center engines from here on.
Boost back burn shut down.
Heard confirmation there of good boost back burn shutdown.
H2 tank pressures are nominal.
Lots of excitement. So right here, this is our view of the jettisoned hot stage. As we mentioned, this is a temporary fix to help reduce the weight of the booster. So we have the Super Heavy booster. Future iterations will have a lighter weight integrated hot stage structure that won't need to be jettisoned.
And you're seeing some incredible views from onboard booster and ship. Ship continuing under power, passing 130 kilometers in altitude. The booster of both vehicles across the Kármán line. The booster now heading back towards the Kármán line in preparation for its re-entry and attempted soft landing in the Gulf of Mexico. Those views of hot staging, absolutely incredible. And was it fitting it happened 4 minutes, 20 seconds into flight? It's SpaceX. Are we surprised? Let's continue to listen in to Mission Control as we watch the incredible 4th flight test of Starship.
Screen. At this point in time, as you can see, we have no engines lit on the booster. It is coasting back toward the Gulf of Mexico for a water landing and ship under power of all 6 Raptor engines. There's 3 sea level and 3 vacuum Raptor engines that are lit, as we can see on your screen.
These views have been looking incredible. Super Heavy has been performing beautifully today. And you can hear the crowd is very excited about it. As a reminder for Booster, the primary goal today is to do a landing burn and a splashdown in the water. And we are just about 30 seconds away from that landing burn expecting to begin. And an incredible view from the forward portion of the booster. This is basically on top of the Super Heavy booster where we have jettisoned that hot stage. So now we can see this incredible view of Earth as it's making its way back down to the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, the booster is using the 4 hypersonic grid fins to guide itself through atmospheric re-entry. And we are expecting that landing burn here. And we will be igniting 13 engines, and this is a great view. On your left-hand side is 3 views from the booster, and your right-hand side a view from the ship. And you can see those grid fins on your left-hand screen rotating and turning to guide the booster, and there's that landing burn. That landing burn just begun, and you can see the water below. And we have splashdown. What an incredible sight! Congratulations to the SpaceX team!
Ship has...
You just watched that live. You just watched the world's largest booster ever re-enter, hover, and splash down in the Gulf of Mexico. Perfectly. Congratulations, SpaceX. That is incredible. We'll have to watch that again later. All eyes are on Starship. It's now in a coast phase. We have shut down of the vacuum engines, and let's follow along as Starship heads around the world.
Flight, but rather one that demonstrates the Starship's orbital capability. So right now we are under power with just the 3 center Raptor engines. Expecting those, and just there we could see that those have also successfully cut off.
Ship FDS is saved.
What an incredible
Nominal orbit insertion.
Oh, there's great news there. The call out we were hoping to hear. Amazing views once again from Starship. We have our 2nd Starship in space. These live views being brought to us by Starlink, which is on board the ship. Dan, what an incredible view we have once again. So exciting. We got another ship in space.
I'm like still jumping up and down. This whole building was going absolutely insane when we saw the booster hit the water. I mean, wow. Congrats to everybody that's just been putting in insane amounts of hours on everything to make this thing a reality. And I feel like every single time we do one of these, we're seeing something wildly new. We got to see the hot stage jettison and the booster in the water. But just to recap real quick over everything that's happened. So we lifted off at 7:50 a.m. only 9 minutes ago. How has it only been 9 minutes? 7:50 a.m. Central at 12:50 UTC. We saw 32 of the 33 Raptor engines on Super Heavy make the ascent. We had successful cutoff, successful hot staging. All 6 engines on the ship powered it all the way into a nominal orbital trajectory. and we've already been getting some live views from the ship on board. After that, the booster was able to do its boost back burn. Oh, this looks like we're actually getting some views from the ground still, potentially from Florida, of the ship as it's up there. That's a view from some of our tracking cameras on the ground in Florida. But the ship, we just heard successful orbital insertion, so it's right where it needs to be and is now going to continue on its way to coast until it comes to reentry. But I mean, the booster, successful boost back burn, jettison the hot stage, and then a landing burn. It looked like we saw 12 of the 13 engines light up, and then that first ever soft splashdown in the water. So a whole lot still to come. Ship now on its way to its primary objective of entry. That's going to be coming up in just under 40 minutes from now. So a lot still to come, but wow, what a 9 minutes to start this mission off. So can't wait to see what entry is going to show us, but that launch was incredible. Back over to you, Jesse and Kate.
Wow. I am still trying to catch my breath here. That was some incredible views that we have never seen before. It has been nonstop since liftoff, and with the booster having completed its job for the day, we're going to take a short break for about the next 28 minutes, and we'll return while we're going to take a break while the ship is continuing to coast before re-entry.
Exactly. As with Flight 3, Starlink may enable us to talk with the ship through re-entry with no communication blackout. We are still testing Starlink during this phase of flight, so of course course, is certain. However, if we do have views, we will be sure to bring those to you live. Views such as the one, that we had. Well, of course, because I said it went away. So we will try to bring those to you live.
Exactly. Views or no views, we'll see you back here at T plus 40 minutes for coverage of Starship's re-entry, flip maneuver, landing burn, and splashdown.
And if you are just joining us, wow, what a day. Don't go anywhere. We're 12 minutes, 52 seconds into flight, and the big moments are still coming. We have literally just watched history in the making. Super Heavy, hovering and soft landing in the Gulf of Mexico, clearing the way, if everything continues well, to a catch attempt possibly on the next launch of Flight 5 with the chopsticks. Now, we want to be honest. There were 2 engines out. We had 1 engine out during flight. We had a different engine out during the landing burn. But look how beautiful and incredible that was. Starship now out in the Gulf of Mexico. I'm curious to see how long it'll take someone to go out there with a boat to see what the area looks like where Super Heavy is. But what an incredible day. Starship is now in low Earth orbit in a suborbital trajectory. We are expecting it to continue on its current journey. Starship re-entry is expected at 47 minutes, 25 seconds into flight. So in the meantime, we're going to answer your guys' comments and questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live. Truly incredible. We're working on getting also the video clips up so you can rewatch that launch and that landing, but absolutely incredible. We are now 32 minutes or so away from Starship re-entry, which will be the next major test for the Starship flight. Again, huge congratulations to the entire SpaceX team so far. This flight is truly incredible, and it just shows that their perseverance and their commitment to this vehicle, they are making these jumps and leaps and bounds in its development, and I would say at this rate, we're going to see orbital flights happening by the end of this year. I don't think we were all so sure with the last few, but with this one, it's looking pretty good, and let's see what happens with Starship re-entry. The big thing is, if they can prove that they can deorbit a Starship, they can start doing operational missions, because they could do expendable vehicles. Same thing they did with Falcon 9. They were launching before they knew they could land. Well, we just saw that they know they can land a Super Heavy, so if they could recover Super Heavy and expend the ship, that would be a major evolution in SpaceX's history. If you guys have questions, keep sending those in the chat. Make sure you subscribe as well so you never miss another live launch coverage. We, of course, are continuing to follow docking the International Space Station. Starliner expected to dock 3 hours, 10 minutes. We're getting ready to spool up our live coverage for that as well as a second stream, so make sure you're following along there. Keep sending in your comments and questions, and we'll be answering those. Sean Butler, what becomes of the booster after the test? Do they just leave them there? So for this one, it is definitely... the plans were that it would just sink into the ocean from our understanding, but we'll have to wait and see what actually occurs with it. If it ends up floating, theoretically, I guess they could try to bring it back into the port, but it's likely that it you saw some explosions there when it landed softly. You saw some flames come up, so it's likely that it's got some punctures and will collect water and ultimately sink into the Gulf of Mexico. But absolutely incredible moments. Keep sending in your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll work on answering those. We're getting those clips up, and stay with us as we continue to await acquisition of signal of Starship from low Earth orbit as we await Starship re-entry. Stay with us. you are just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. 25 minutes, 53 seconds into flight. Shout out to Lewis on our team, has been monitoring the telemetry coming in, and we have had confirmed apogee at 213 kilometers. Starship has now reached the highest point in its flight and is beginning its descent back down to Earth. We are expecting entry of Earth to begin at 47 minutes, 25 seconds into flight, so everything continuing on timeline for that. We don't really have any more milestones until then. We're keeping an eye on that telemetry feed. We're not too sure why we don't have any signal coming in from the ship, but we do have that telemetry updating in the bottom right corner of your screen. We did take a look back at the footage, and right before we had loss of signal, Starship did roll 90 degrees. So we're wondering if maybe one of the signal dishes is just pointed the wrong way and we don't have a strong enough feed for the coverage there, or just its ground track isn't passing over enough ground stations to get footage. But we will hopefully have that return in time for entry, expecting that in about 20 minutes time. We'll of course be patching SpaceX audio back in when they get rid of the interesting music and start beginning commentary updates again. If you haven't yet, take a moment, send in those questions in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We've been monitoring for those in the chat, and if you also make sure you're following along with Starliner as things continue. We do have the clips of launch and Super Heavy Splashdown now up, so if you want to watch a replay of those, they are on the channel. Make sure you share those out on social media as well. And while we wait for Starship to come back to entry into Earth's atmosphere, head on over to the Launchpad shop, get your limited edition IFT Flight Test 4 gear. This is our TLP custom patch for this flight. It's limited edition, only available for a little bit of time, but definitely take a moment and pick one of those up. Global shipping's available, and all that goes back into us getting more cameras and equipment out into the field to bring you even better possible coverage. We're deep into planning for Flight 5 and 6, and we can't wait for you to see what we have in the works. Thank you all so much for being here. You can keep sending in those questions, and we'll continue to monitor as we await the entry of Starship back into the Earth's atmosphere. Stay with us.
out in communication.
Yeah, that's right, Kate. And Starlink's what's really allowing us to capture as much data as possible, especially through this reentry. Updated animation landing burn. I hope we get to see it for real today. But these live views that we're getting now and we're going to continue to get are through Starlink. That's going to allow us to get as much data as possible, which we've said it before. We're going to say it 9,000 times. The data is the payload on these flights. So as much as we can learn, that's just going to pay dividends on all of our future flights and help us get Starship to an operational phase. Reentry, obviously a really critical phase of the flight, and it's the one that we're now most focused on cracking to get us closer to that full reusability. Starlink is going to be able to send us data back all the way through reentry. We've done some additional testing, and we're expecting to be able to get data from Starlink thanks to its high frequency and kind of the orientation and everything of Starship all the way through reentry. And then got a new view here. We have two external views. We had this one on Flight 3. We've got two for this one. And we're going to continue adding views as we continue to evolve Starship. Again, this is an experimental vehicle. Believe me, I want as many camera views as you all do. So huge shout out to the AVI and the software teams and everybody that's been working with us. We're getting more cameras on Starship. Not just because it looks cool, but this provides an incredible insight into reentry, which is, historically a really tough window to look through.
Starship is approaching entry interface.
The physics of reentry are insanely intense. One of my favorite NASA astronauts, Victor Glover, recently described it as with the forces and the flows and the temperatures, it's like pointing at a raging river in one spot and saying, tell me exactly what's happening right there. And that's what a ship is experiencing as it goes through, as it's moving through the atmosphere at, more than 5 miles a second and heating up to thousands of degrees. So just having visual representation, just being able to see what's happening is incredibly valuable. So these views are going to be through Starlink. We've got this one. This is in one of the forward flaps looking back. So if you see it rotating around, that's because, again, it's embedded in one of those forward flaps. So as we get through and we start to build up density in the atmosphere, this view is going to move around as the flap does. And then the other.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You are looking at incredible views from onboard Starship Ship 29 in low Earth orbit, coming up on the Kármán line. And you can see it there. The start of the glowing Starship has begun entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. This is the big test of these Starship heat tiles. Will they survive? Will they hold on? And will Starlink be able to give us a live view all the way through re-entry like it did with the ship? We're going to listen in to SpaceX Mission Control as we watch Starship S-29 come home.
With that view on your screen again, high def brought to us by Starlink. We can see the plasma beginning to build as the ship is getting closer to the Earth's atmosphere. Now, let's talk a little bit about how Starship will survive re-entry, hopefully, and control itself.
Exactly. We've been talking about this.
Starship has now descended to the Kármán line, beginning re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere.
Portion, or the Earth-facing side of the ship.
Through 100 kilometers altitude, good altitude for entry.
Great call-outs there. Now, during atmospheric reentry, the vehicle is going to see temperatures as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit or over 1,400 degrees Celsius. So those tiles are there to help protect the vehicle from this extreme heat.
Yeah, and the flaps will help control it. Now, one noticeable difference I see immediately, those flaps are not moving as much as they were on Flight 3. So that is a great sign, right? We had unplanned loss of roll control on Flight 3, so we added some additional thrusters, and we can see that they're working well, and we have a much more stable view. So those flaps, there's 4 of them, 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. They're made out of stainless steel, and yeah, they help steer near the ship, which, as we can see, the plasma continuing to build. Now, if the ship survives reentry, it will have to perform a flip maneuver as well as a landing burn. We saw this demonstrated in a couple of high-altitude flight tests back in like 2020, 2021. Similarly,
temperatures increasing on the nose within expected ranges.
Great news there. It sounds like the temperatures that we are getting during this point, which again, we usually don't get during spaceflight because of this plasma. We're getting this live. This is a great news. So similarly to, for example, the serial number 10 test that we saw a couple years ago, we're hoping to duplicate that again today. Hopefully we will see it live. And basically the 3 center engines of the ship will reignite and gimbal or point to help flip the ship until those engines are pointing down so that it can land vertically using Raptor's thrust.
And as you can see, even from the beginning of the program, we've designed Starship to land on Mars where there are no runways or other humans to help out. We also want rapid reusability, so we're doing...
Vehicle is passing through 85 kilometers altitude. The flaps have control of the vehicle.
Great news. Flaps have control of the vehicle. That's exactly what we want to hear for this flight test.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a quick note here. We thought the feed was frozen there. It's not. That is a live view. Starship re-entering, passing 82 kilometers in altitude, completely stable.
An awesome view that we have here.
Starship remains on a good entry trajectory.
This is the same view that we had when we first returned from the coast phase. Again, this is looking at the side of one of the flaps. It's incredible that literally at the bottom of this picture, we're basically looking through plasma, which is just absolutely mind-blowing.
Wild, very wild. Now we are expecting entry to begin here in about 30 seconds or so. Entry to splashdown is expected to last about 6 minutes long. And that flip maneuver should occur around about 10 minutes before splashdown. And such incredible views that we're getting.
Approaching peak heating region.
Great call-outs there.
Yeah, these views are absolutely astounding.
Nose temperatures continue to rise within expected region.
And in your bottom right-hand corner, you can also follow along with the altitude of ship as it's returning back to Earth.
So once again, this view is basically looking down into the plasma blanket that is building up around the exterior of Starship. It is traveling, as you can see on your screen. You can look in the bottom right-hand corner and see how fast it's going, how high it is, as well as the general orientation. Again, we're seeing a lot more stability, a lot more control here on this flight, which is great. It shows that the iterations, the learning...
Starship is now in expected peak heating region.
All right, great news there, telling us that this is basically the hottest point that Starship should get during its reentry. Now, the heat shield is working with the atmosphere for some free braking, okay? The atmosphere is helping to slow the Starship down.
Yeah, exactly. We're not using any engines or thrust to slow the vehicle down. Exactly what Kate mentioned. We're just using the atmosphere and those heat shield tiles protecting the vehicle as it's coming through that high heat temperature.
Yeah. Now, this is another one of those moments that we have been waiting for. Right now, the ship is currently re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and by all looks and all call-outs that we're hearing on the net, it is doing pretty well. Now, we do not plan to recover the spacecraft today, but rapid and reliable reusability is the ultimate goal.
And just pausing to just take in this incredible new and different view that we're seeing. We did get a similar view in Flight 3, but again, the vehicle did lose a little bit of its control, attitude control, and this is a very stable view. This is great. This is exactly what we want, and we are hearing that we're getting expected call-outs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Starship is seeing half a G of acceleration, remains on a good entry trajectory.
You know, it's incredible to look at this photo and wonder, wait, is it real? Is it frozen? You know, we can see so I was just going to say
Those temperatures have stopped increasing.
Oh, that is great news. The temperature is no longer building. But I was saying, like, we have a little bit of indication there. We can see that streaking that occurs and tells us that this is indeed a true view. So once again, we are looking basically through the plasma that is building up around the exterior of the ship.
And I still cannot get over that we are getting a live view of re-entry right now, live on your screen. Again, we've said this over and over, but all thanks to Starlink. We are able to use Starlink in space, which we're getting this incredible data. And not only just the data from the sensors, but getting live imagery of what is actually happening, which is great, which we've never been able to do live before.
Right. Now, just a quick future outlook here. So in about, let's see, at T plus about 1 hour and 2 minutes, we should hear a call out for entry transonic. That means that the ship is going near the speed of sound. And then about a minute after that, we'll hear another call out saying entry subsonic, meaning that the ship is going below the speed of sound. So these are all continued indications that the atmosphere, right, as the ship comes back down, it is getting through the more dense part of the atmosphere, and that atmosphere is helping to push against the vehicle, and those heat shields are protecting the vehicle during this high heat period.
Yeah, Kate and Jesse, we're starting to see as the atmosphere gets denser, you're starting to see a few more particles make an appearance in the plasma there. You can see you're looking down at the aft end of the ship in the top left, and you're seeing essentially the flame build up as we go through reentry. You've been hearing the call-outs. They're tracking things like temperatures in the nose cone, and those were right where we modeled them to be, which is really cool to see and to see in real time. But we're coming up, we're at about 67 kilometers in altitude. Our last signal with the ship on Flight 3 was at 65, so we should be making it past that point shortly. Obviously, as you guys pointed out, we're in a much better control this time as we re-entered in the right attitude, and our flaps have been steering the way so far. Once we get through transonic, that's when you've got essentially
Raptor landing bird.
Different areas around the vehicle where the air is either moving faster or slower than the speed of sound. We'll eventually get to subsonic, which we have some experience with. We did in our suborbital campaign.
Startup rapid
and then Starship will eventually get down to its terminal velocity as it's floating down to the water. That's just about 200 miles an hour or so. We are hearing that we're starting to chill some of the engines as we are, if we make it all the way down to the water, still going to attempt a landing burn, but still a ways to go. We're at about 64 kilometers.
And if you're just joining us, you are looking at historic live views coming in from onboard Starship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Watch that speed and altitude. She is just skimming across the atmosphere, coming in, starting to burn off that speed. Let's continue to listen into mission control in preparation for the re-entry of Starship.
65 kilometers. So again, what we're really looking at here is the performance of the heat shield, of the flaps, of the seals in the flaps. There's just a whole bunch of different areas that we're keeping a really close eye on as we re-enter.
Starship remains on a good entry trajectory.
And looking like we're still on a good trajectory. If you're seeing little camera moves, that's the flap moving as it continues to maintain the attitude of the vehicle as it re-enters.
Look at that incredible heating on the heat shield. That white glow is the plasma superheating those Starship tiles.
Down at the very aft end of the vehicle where we pointed out we had some intentionally missing tiles, where we've got some sensors looking at just how hot it's getting around there. We intentionally put those in essentially the least critical part of the heat shield, where if you had any kind of a breach, it wouldn't be great for reusability, but wouldn't be critical for actual making it through the reentry into the landing. 58 kilometers. We're continuing to descend. Again, right now we are over the Indian Ocean. We're actually getting closer and closer to that expected splashdown point, which is just to the off the northwest corner of Australia. And if you keep an eye on our speed, the speed is dropping. We're hitting the thicker part of the atmosphere now. The speed's going to start dropping precipitously. We're going to start getting to transonic pretty soon, and then after that we'll get into subsonic, where we're moving less than the speed of sound. But wow, what a light show so far!
External temperatures are starting to come down.
Again, this camera view is looking right at one of the forward flaps. And we're strategically putting some cameras around the vehicle to just look at the different areas that looks like we got the flap starting to come apart a little.
Yeah, it does appear that we have a little bit of burn through there. We can see pieces of the vehicle flying off. What a show it has been. It's been like watching Interstellar or something.
This is wild to see this, but the ship is still coming down, which is incredible to see.
We are watching this
How
in
far
real
can
time.
it go? That is the question.
Keep your eye on the altitude in the bottom right-hand corner. We're at 54 kilometers right now.
Now, ultimately, the data is the payload today. We've been saying it multiple times. Our teams are sitting, reviewing this data live, learning where the hot spots are. As you can see, there's an obvious hot spot there with the flap, and learning how we can improve this design. The goal was to get as far through this high heat re-entry as possible. Ideally, we'd love to make it all the way down and perform that landing burn and flip maneuver, but we may not get that far today. We will see.
Again, this is a test, and we are gathering as much data as possible, visual data as well, which we can see here. We are getting a lot of debris covering the camera on your screen, but we can still see some of those sparks and flames from that high heat as ship is making its way back down to Earth.
Ship now at 50 kilometers and closing. The good news is we still got, looks like that camera lens just cracked. It's safe to say ship's getting a little beat up, but that's to be expected on a test flight. We are still learning how to improve the ship for total survival and recovery of the high heat reentry.
I'm honestly impressed that we're still getting this live view despite how much debris is coming off of this flap right now.
The fact that we've got it is good news. And I may have jinxed it. I apologize. Look at that, it's back.
We are still going.
And the teams here at SpaceX are excited, as you can tell by the cheering behind us. There's still a sizable crowd here at Mission Control Center, Hawthorne.
A splashdown is expected in just about 4 minutes from now. And we're still moving. We still have live views. Starlink is doing an incredible
approaching
job.
maximum entry dynamic pressure. External temperatures are dropping.
Okay, good news, those external pressures are dropping. The question is, how much of the ship is left? We can't really tell. We can still see some of that particulate coming off. And unfortunately, we do have a cracked camera lens, but for any photographers out there and videographers, we know that's part of the gig sometimes.
Yeah, and you can see that the speed is rapidly slowing down. That's actually really great news for us. We want the vehicle to be slowing down before it splashes down into the ocean. That'll help set us up for that flip maneuver, engines first down into the water.
Exactly. So we have seen this flip maneuver demonstrated on previous high altitude flight tests like serial number 8. Oh, more views. or I should say, more light coming through the view that we have through that cracked and dirtied lens there. But yeah, so we're hoping that this flip maneuver, that we can pull it off as soon as we get those views back. If we can get them, if the ship is still around, we will bring it back to you.
Vehicle has passed maximum dynamic pressure.
That is great news. Maximum dynamic pressure being the moment in which the vehicle experiences the greatest amount of aerodynamic pressure. Speed still dropping. We're now at 37 kilometers above the ocean. Just like Flight 3, we are targeting a splashdown in the water in the Indian Ocean.
And we don't have a live view right now, but because we're still getting data and telemetry, that does tell us that ship is still doing okay, at least. And there we got that live view back. The crowd very excited to see that view, despite not being able to see very much.
The fact that it's there tells us the ship is still alive.
Yes, and collecting data, continuing to collect data as we get closer and closer to Earth.
Yes, now 30 kilometers, now 29 above the
Starship
Indian
is
Ocean.
at 30 kilometers altitude, Mach 2.
Sounds like the vehicle's traveling, as we just heard, Mach 2, which is, looks like we might, I thought maybe it might clear up. It is a little bit, now at T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes and 13 seconds into Starship Flight 4, hoping that the ship can hang on. It's probably potentially hanging on by a couple of bolts and threads, but it's still going, and that is excellent news.
That deceleration is looking incredible. We're about to go under 1,000 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
Starship is at 20 kilometers altitude.
Now, keep in mind that even though we can't see anything, the data itself is what we really are.
Starship is subsonic.
Subsonic, they're telling us it's traveling below the speed of sound. That movement means the flaps are actuating. I think we can see something. This is a nail biter. But we are, unfortunately, we can't see through the lens, but we're still getting the feed. Starship is now 11 kilometers over the ocean. All this data...
Ladies and gentlemen, we are in belly flop. We are belly flopping.
Okay, we can see that flap actuating through the glass.
Starship is passing through 10 kilometers altitude.
Okay, the next milestone will be initiation of the flip maneuver and landing burn. Keep an eye on the bottom right corner of your screen for those 3 center engines to relight. They will gimbal or angle so that the ship flips itself back up vertical and hopefully lands in a vertical position.
And the crowd is very excited to get this view of that flap still maneuvering.
Starship is passing through 5 kilometers altitude.
This is incredible. We're getting very close to splashdown.
These fireflies are such a good sign of life right now. We wish we could see more, but we'll take it.
Starship is at 2 kilometers altitude, terminal velocity.
Landing burn startup for Starship.
All right, good news there.
Nominal chamber pressure.
Landing board startup.
Starship is in landing burn.
Landing burn shutdown.
The landing burn shutdown was commanded. Wow. I mean, it was a little bit of use your imagination as you were going down with what we could actually see, but we were able to hear the ship did its landing burn. It sounded
Starship
like we
landing
might
burn
have got
shutdown.
2 engines. And there's the final call for landing burn shutdown, but we'll go back through all the data, but we did get confirmation that a landing burn took place. Starship made it through re-entry and did its first ever landing burn from South Texas to the other side of the air.
I'm going to cut in here for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we just watched history. We just watched live views via Starlink, a satellite internet constellation, full views through full re-entry. We just saw the world's largest, most powerful rocket splash down its booster, belly flop, flip, and soft splash down in the Indian Ocean, the ship. This is only the 4th time this vehicle has flown, and SpaceX has done it. They have recovered a booster and a Starship. This is incredible. Let's listen back into mission control, but congratulations, SpaceX.
On the Gulf, ship made it to space, kept its attitude, successful re-entry through peak heating. We got to see it under flap control through the atmosphere, and we got call out of our first ever ship landing burn after a launch into space. So just really incredible. So I'm going to take some time to collect myself, but wow, that was incredible. I can't wait for the next one. Over to you guys.
It was so loud here. I haven't heard the crowd get that loud probably since liftoff of Flight 1, honestly.
That was incredible. Congratulations to our teammates, to everyone who supported the Starship program. Thanks to all of our future customers for your support. And we'd also like to thank the people of Cameron County, Texas, as well as the Coast Guard, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the government of Mexico. And since Starship got a little bit toasty from that extreme heat of reentry, and we've got our very own Starship right here, let's have a toast of our own.
I've been waiting all morning for this.
Okay, may I?
Light me up. Yeah. Just like Starship, I like this toasty.
I'm keeping this.
Now, we've got more Starship test flights coming to you soon. Be sure to follow the SpaceX account on X for more updates from today's test flight and future Starship tests. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
Well, wow, what an incredible day. Back to the very foggy live view from Starbase, Texas. Again, congratulations, SpaceX. If you were just joining us, rewind an hour and 9 minutes. You have just witnessed history. The first ever Starship Super Heavy booster launching, Super Heavy splashing down in the Gulf of Mexico. The Starship re-entering and performing a belly flop and landing flip. An incredible milestone jump. And it's on to Flight 5. The FAA did put in a list of things that if SpaceX had certain failure points during the landing of the ship, they would not need a full investigation. We'll have to wait to see what the FAA deems from today's flight, but it definitely looked like they might have been within those parameters. So Flight 5 might not be months away. It might just be weeks, and Starship will be back on the pad in the very near future. Of course, SpaceX will now go inspect the launch site before they reopen the road, making sure everything is safe. A huge shout out to our incredible TLP Rocket Chaser team that is down on site. We've got Gavin and John, and we've got Danny and more of our team. Thank you to all of our TLP moderators who make this possible so I can focus on streaming while they focus on chat and keeping this a safe and fun environment for all. If it was your first time here, though, welcome. My name's Zach, and I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad Network, and on behalf of the entire TLP crew, thank you so much for joining us. Head on over to the Launchpad shop, get your limited edition TLP Flight Test 4 patch launch gear. We've got shirts and stickers. Definitely check that out. That all goes back into helping us bring you better coverage of everything space. Stay tuned to social media. We've got remote cameras out in the field. We'll see if they worked. So stay tuned for that. Get some of our pre-launch photos now available on the Launchpad shop as well. We are going to turn all eyes from Starship back on Earth, back up to low Earth orbit, where Starliner is preparing to dock to the International Space Station in just over 2 hours' time. but what an incredible day. Again, congratulations to the entire SpaceX team. Join us over on the TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out in between streams. We'd love to see you there. And if you're interested in becoming a future launch broadcast host, a moderator, or a TLP journalist and researcher because you believe that space is better together, take a moment and submit one of the applications in the chat below. We're going to head on over, all eyes over to Starliner, but that's going to do it for our Starship Flight 4 live launch and landing coverage from our TLP Canada studio. My name's Zach, and we will see you back here for Flight 5 because space is better together. Have a great day, everyone, and congratulations, SpaceX. Go Starship.